Sure. So after we spoke the other day, it didn't occur to me when you were telling me this whole story about the animals you've been encountering. And it didn't even occur to me until later that day when I had another encounter. That morning, I had seen a fox run through my neighborhood. And then, like 10 minutes later, it ran back with a rabbit in its mouth. And I was like, oh my gosh, I was like, this is so cool. We get to see this. And then we spoke. And then later in the evening, I saw the fox again. And it was trucking, like it wasn't wasting any time, but it was limping. It wasn't using its last leg. It was only running on 3 legs and it was carrying its last leg. And I was just like, oh, this is exactly what Virginia was referencing.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Also, that is just so wild. Like, because I literally have said, I mean, 2 things. One, the coyote that I found on the side of the road, I left him, or I think it was a her, with a little totem that was like literally a little fox, because I was like, oh, like fox and coyote are friends. So I'm going to leave this like in her arms to keep her company. And I have literally, fox is like another sacred totem of mine. And I've literally said, oh, I'm going to be having the experience with fox sometime soon. So that's so funny that you start this conversation with that.
Yeah, I saw it 3 times in one day following the same track right by my house. And I live in like suburbia. Yeah. So that's not really
well. We are quantumly connected. So Eliz, I am so excited to be chatting with you today on the Divine Dialogues. And I would love for you to just go ahead and tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Sure. So I'm Eliz Britton. I studied traditional Chinese medicine for 10 years. I have a doctor's diploma in traditional Chinese medicine. About 4 years ago, I felt a pull towards quantum healing, something I'd known about for a very long time, and I thought I was doing something was going on, and I wasn't quite sure what it was. But the more I started learning about quantum healing, I was like, oh, I think this is what's happening when I'm encountering people and treating people. So I decided to get some formal training done last year, and now I am actively treating people in the quantum realms.
Yes. So what were some of those things that were kind of like cueing you into the fact that there was like some quantum multidimensional stuff going on?
A certain level of healing was taking place that I felt was out of the complete scope of traditional Chinese medicine. So traditional Chinese medicine can do amazing things. Yes, you can have great results from 1 or 2 treatments, but it's not super consistent that you're always getting a patient where they're getting 1 or 2 treatments and then they're just resolved and there's no reason for them to come back. And that's what I was finding was happening.
Right.
Some of the patients where I was looking at their charts and I was going, okay, this is a case that's going to need, minimum 10 treatments. Like that's what I would recommend to them. 2 treatments later, they're like, nope, gone, bye. Thank you very much for your help. If I need you again, I'll call you. And so, that was my first inclination that something else was happening besides just the needles doing their work.
Right. So tell us, and of course you have very recently given me my first 2 quantum healings that I've ever received. And so that is just like a little bit of background as far as like, we'll go into that a bit too. Can you just tell us about what quantum healing is? Because I think a lot of people are talking about it these days and it's kind of like, what is it?
Oh, sorry, my phone almost blew away. So I'm going to think for a second because I want to make sure I get a cohesive answer for you. It's a section of science that's still being discovered. But scientists have found is that when they are dealing with atoms and molecules, that they have their own energetic fields that affect other things. And inherently, everything that we are made of and that the planet is made of atoms as the building blocks. So then everything has this field, and there's a bit of randomness to it, but there's also a system to it, a very elegant system. And so as you start going from the smaller to the larger realms of organism, like structures, these fields interact with each other in different ways. And so what quantum healing is accessing these different energetic fields that connect all of us and allowing our consciousness to actively affect it.
Yes.
So I think that's the key part here, is that, you know, our reality can be affected by our consciousness. And one of the ways that we can do that is by activating these energetic fields that are around us all the time, whether it's our personal field, whether it's the grids of the planet. You know, it's the active choice that you can make or not make. It's part of the free choice. And so that's what I work with. I work with connecting people more intuitively to themselves, and then also to work, you know, connecting them more with the grids of the planet.
Right. So how would you compare quantum healing to like Reiki, like traditional energy healing like that?
I don't think you can really compare them. I think they're just different. For Reiki, you're sending energy. For what I'm doing, bought a phone stand just so that I wouldn't have to worry about this for our conversation. And here I am still jumping at my phone.
Yeah, we're good.
You know, in Reiki, you're sending, my understanding of Reiki is that you're sending energy through you to someone else. With quantum healing, all I'm doing is setting up an energetic field for your body to do what it needs to do on its own, with the intention of a specific alignment taking place. And my work with the quantum fields and the energy grids of the planet, you know, the quantum healing stuff started about 4 years ago, but my work with the energy grids of the planet has been pretty consistent over, you know, my life.
Right.
I don't know if I could have explained it when I was younger, but it's very clear that I've been heavily working with the Gaia grid. So, yeah, I wouldn't really compare them. I would just say they're different.
So, and you and I have both listened to, and probably some other people who are listening to this interview have, you know, listened to some Cryon channeling and maybe some Lee Carroll stuff with that. But, and he talks about, yeah, love, like The Journey Home is one of my favorite books ever. And so he, you know, Cryon talks a lot about this crystalline energy grid. Can you tell us more about the Gaia grid and the crystal energy grid, like for people who don't know?
Sure. So two of the main grids are the magnetic grid and the crystalline grid. And the crystalline grid is kind of like Earth's memory field. So it's, the way I explain it is, you know, the Earth knows you, it recognizes your being, and it remembers you from your past lives because it has a memory of your soul here. And so part of the crystalline grid that's connected with Earth is also contains like your own personal soul memory with it.
Wow.
But it also remembers all the actions and events that took place on the planet. So that's why when some people go to a battlefield, they may be like, I don't want to be here anymore. I'm getting really creepy vibes. I remember visiting Williamsburg once and I got lost on a back road and I was just like, I'm done. I don't care how bad I want to get away from my family right now. Like, we're turning the car around, and that 3-point turn in the middle of the night was like one of the freakiest events of that whole trip. And I was like, I can't get out of this place fast enough, because the memory of what had happened there was still there. And that must've been what I was picking up on.
Right.
And that goes for good stuff too. Usually people never get to experience the good stuff unless they're in a really pristine place that hasn't seen war or, you know, drama.
Violence.
So that, yeah, so that's the crystalline grid. And then the magnetic grid is the most obvious way to look at that one is checking out an airport. There was a whole period of time where when you were at the airport, or maybe you may still see it at the airport, where they were changing the numbers on the runways. That's because the grid had shifted a little bit. And so they had to recalibrate all of the runways to match where the magnetic grids were now landing so that the planes could land correctly on the runways.
Wait, so they actually use the magnetic grid of the Earth for plane landings?
Yeah, for navigation.
Oh.
Yeah.
I didn't clearly didn't.
Yeah, for like the compasses, right? Like to tell them which directions they're going in, they use the grid.
Okay. So is there any like significance with that change for us as far as like, you know, does that coincide with like, because I'm always into the integration, right? It's like, okay, you know, astrologically, we're in a new age, and then magnetically, what does that look like? And then, you know, literally in nature, what does that look like? Or
yeah, I think magnetic grid is much more easier to measure than the crystalline grid.
Yeah.
I think the crystalline grid is more felt and like intuitively, as opposed to the magnetic grid where they can take measurements of it as of right now.
Right.
I would say it's a representation of Earth's evolution and where she's headed to the fifth dimension, like the higher plane. So this is like her adjustment, like I didn't like 3D anymore, so I'm just gonna I'm gonna adjust a little bit, and this is part of that shift. And that shift is also helping support us in our ascension process to allow our physical bodies to become more aligned with the vibrations that are starting to hit our planet.
Right. Absolutely. So for me, you know, and we've chatted a bit, like just to talk about it a little bit with my experience, and then I want to ask you, you know, other things that you've had people experience. So like and then actually I'll say this. So the first time that you gave me the first quantum healing, which I'll ask you to talk about kind of what happens in that procession. I like woke up from that, and, you know, we did it remotely. So like you're 1,000 miles away or whatever. And obviously on a quantum level, that's possible because it's beyond space and time. So I woke up from that, and first like looked at my phone. It was exactly 11 a.m. Like it had been exactly an hour. That happened to me both times, by the way. And I had a missed call from my hairdresser, and I was like, yep, I'm chopping all my hair off. Like something had just like switched in me. And I'd kind of been thinking about getting a haircut, which is why I had called her, but just like a trim. And then I was like, no, like I have to cut all of my hair off. And so
yes,
something happened there. So actually, I guess, so if you would just go ahead and talk about like, what is that first activation? Because there are multiple treatments. And what do you usually kind of see with people after that? And then we'll go into the second one.
So the first excavation.
It is an excavation,
yes.
maybe.
Yeah. So the first treatment is centered around aligning your cellular structures with your higher intuition, like your higher self.
Right.
So it's an integration of those systems to make a communication between them more synchronous and clear. So that's the first session. The second session is then taking that system that has had time to integrate between your cells and your higher self, and then connecting it to the grids of the planet. So that now the synchronicity you're experiencing within your own system can be in coherence with synchronicities that are also showing up or available to you around you more clearly. And my expectation of what comes out of it doesn't exist when I give that treatment. I have no expectation of what will come out of it for the people I'm treating, because it's not my place to have an expectation for that. It's their journey. I just set the space for it. So I go in pretty empty-headed because it's none of my business except to just make the connection happen. And then what people experience afterward is very personal.
Yes.
Because it is, even though it's the same treatment every time I do it, because you're an individual and the things that you need to benevolently come into your life and experience is going to be different for everyone.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and you and I have chatted a bit about this, but like I did post one video on YouTube about my, finding the owls and then finding the coyote. But me finding that coyote on the side of the road. So just speaking of, like getting my synchronicities in my grid, like aligned with the earth's, right? And I'm having all these experiences with like animal totem teachers. And so the next day after our treatment was when I found the coyote on the side of the road and kind of had that communion. And then literally, and then I created that video because I was already like, wow, look, like coyote and owl magic. And I haven't even recorded anything about how the next day I followed all these random back roads that I had never been on, that I had, in this way I had never gone. It's actually not too far from my hometown, like not too far from the Wyoming-Montana border. And I follow all these roads back to this place where these people have 5 coyotes hung on these, adjacent fence posts. And it was just like, okay, like I am being led to be a representative of, to be guarded by and be a guardian of something much larger than myself. But like literally, I mean, that's magical. That's like beyond synchronistic, like we talked about. And for me, there's no way to not relate that to the fact that I had just had a quantum healing like the day before.
Yeah, I think that's what happens for a bunch of people as well. So far for the people that I've treated, that has probably been the biggest theme, is that whatever they thought they were synchronistically experiencing, that they were passing off as, that was really coincidence. All of a sudden they're like, oh no, like I cannot deny that this was pieced together in a way that I can't explain, that was just for me.
Yeah. That is, and of course I'm going to be linking to like all things Eliz in the about this video, because you do remote quantum healings and you can do them for anyone all over the world.
Yes.
Right. So
absolutely. That's like the beauty of unconditional pure love, right?
Yes.
Defies time and space.
Exactly. So can you do quantum healings on yourself?
Yes. And it's I have to admit, I probably haven't done it as frequently as I should, but when I'm in that zone, like I believe I'm also receiving that love.
Right.
It's not just you or the other person that's getting it. Like I have to embody that. So every time I give a treatment, I get a treatment. And then I'm in the zone a lot of the time.
Yes. What does that mean to you to be in the zone?
I'm very aware. I'm super connected to Gaia. Like as soon as we're done this video, I will be washing off whatever. My hair's going to get a mess. I'm going to be covered in dirt. I'm going to wash off what little makeup I have on, and I will have my hands, making a mess. But I'm super aware of all the synchronistic events. I actively engage in making a space to bring the things that I want to bring into fruition, so that they can come.
Yes.
Whether that's with intention or affirmations. I'm always up to something along those lines. And then of course I have my whole stash of crystals that I work with occasionally for myself. Usually my self-work is more around working with my crystals. I can't separate my spiritual life from my daily activities. It used to be I could compartmentalize it.
Well, that's integration.
Yeah, I can't I can't separate it anymore. There's no point in trying. Yeah, hiding from it and not exposing like that side of me. Apparently it's impossible. People will just hang out with me and they'll just be like, okay, what's happening here? What's going on with you here? None of this should have taken place today. How did you make that happen? You know?
Right.
I don't know if it was me, but if it was good and it worked for everyone, why not?
I love that. So what is your description of 5D? Because this is something that keeps coming up with so many people that I'm talking to. And, you know, specifically like a lot of people who are maybe have come from a more academic bent, just a more like physical, like very like hard matter, hard this kind of bent. And a lot of these people, it seems like now, are finding themselves doing very magical things that logical part of their mind would have said was absolutely insane in the 5th dimension. And what is this 5D thing that's going on?
All right, I'm gonna take a bite of crayon because he really explained it better. And so my perception of what this is has a lot to do with things that I've heard from his sessions. So everyone knows what 1D, 2D, 3D, and even 4D is. 4D is time. Apparently, once you get past 4D, the idea that there's a 5 or a 6 or 7 is very linear and is kind of BS, because once you get past 4D, it's 4D infinite.
Right.
So you can I think people are using 5D to describe it because that's the human linear way of saying this is the next step.
Right.
But really it's not 5D at all. It could be multiple dimensions that Earth is passing through. We're probably passing through multiple dimensions right now, and we are just unaware of it because we can't see it or feel it or quantify it. Like you can't quantify multiple dimensions. They exist and they are present, and you can be in different places in space and time with them. And so the number is, I think, just something people get attached to. 5D is, who knows what 5D is? We could be in 8D right now, or 24D, Right.
What are some of the signs for you that you're getting higher dimensional, if we could call it that? And maybe it's hard to quantify, like you said, but I guess we're all here trying to learn to trust those things that aren't necessarily quantifiable. So what are some indicators for you?
Oh man, trust is a huge part of it. It's a huge part of it.
Yes.
So when I have stepped out of our 4D experience, what I have felt more often than not is like a full body experience that I'm getting used to. So I've done meditations where I can feel myself drifting into a different space or energy, and it's so foreign that sometimes it has just like jolted me out of where I was, and I'm like, oh right, I'm in bed with a blanket on me, like I don't need to jump like that. And then I'd do it again, and then it would feel less weird, because it feels weird, especially if you've ever done drugs before and you know what that feels like. But to be 100% sober and then still have an experience where you're like, and then just to be able to like snap back out of it and look around your room and wait, I'm still here. It's a little disorienting, in my personal opinion, but it feels really positive. Like, it's not like I go to that space and I'm scared. Like, there's no fear in that space. Like, it's like you can't carry it with you. You have to leave it behind. And so whenever I have had multidimensional experiences like that, I've always come back or taken back with me like this feeling of, man, I can't wait to do that again. It felt really good to my body. I don't know what just happened, but I want to go back.
Right. And it's like an altered state.
And it's gotten easier and easier. It's definitely been getting easier, and I want to make it clear to everyone that like they have access to this too. It's not just for like special people who have recognized their gifts. Like this is a gift that all humans have innately in their cellular structures to experience. And if they haven't tried yet, they should.
Yes. And again, I love how you said that like trust is such a big piece of it, because, you know, you and I were chatting about how you've always kind of had this, you know, I feel that all humans are super sensory, probably in all capacities, but maybe we each have a certain sensory gift that we're more prone to. And for you, you know, you were talking about it's clairaudience. And I feel like when we're children, we know these things, like, and maybe we don't, it's just normal to us, whether it's clairsentience, you know, clairvoyance, like whatever. But then as we get older, the same way that you were kind of saying, like before the quantum healings, you know, it's like, oh, that was just a coincidence. Oh, that doesn't mean anything. Oh, I made that up. And like that trust is just such a big piece of like tuning into our higher sensory selves, as well as like these higher dimensional experiences.
Oh yeah, and kids are on it. Like they don't have the same filters put on them that they get when they're older. Like talk to a little kid that's like 6 or 7 years old, or even 5. If their imaginations will take it to the next level, and you're like, man, like I used to be like that. Like, and you can vaguely remember it in your childhood. Like I had a wild childhood, and I remember times where I thought I literally was flying. And I was
you
like,
probably were.
And I probably was like, but my body wasn't. Like I was off. I was convinced that if I just like focused on it, I could fly. And so, you know, when I look at my kids now and their friends, I'm like, man, just take away the electronic and let them go. Because that's what they're going to need to remember when they get older. And I think their imagination is literally, what's the word I'm looking for here? It is creativity at its finest, which influences their reality, right? Like if our consciousness is all about making reality happen for us the way that we want it to, and bringing it to fruition, children are the masters of that.
Yes.
Like they have the flexibility and creativity in their brain to create what they want to see.
Yes.
And if adults could remember what that felt like, I think that would help them progress into making the things that they want to see happen in their life now take place. Because there's no walls. There's really no limit to what we can create as humans. And as we embrace that reality more and the truth of that, I think we're just going to keep coming into our power and lighting up this planet.
Amen. And I think too, so much of it is like we get attached to the how, you know, in a way that kids don't. And then we so often, I think, stop things from coming into manifestation because like it had to happen this way. And if any of us who have experienced manifestation or just life in general, like have observed anything about it, it's like, no, the stuff happens and it's never how you think it was going to happen.
Yeah. So there's a Chinese proverb I'm going to mess up really hard right now, where it's basically like, you know, you think of what you want, and then you have to create an empty space so that the universe can return it to you however it wants. Yes. And you have to make that space without expectation, because again, your expectation is part of your consciousness that affects the outcome, right? So if you want a car or you want something to happen in your life, you just need to make an empty space for it to grow into, and then not judge how it comes back to you, because you don't know how it will come back to you.
Right. And, you know, I've never thought of it this way, but it kind of reminds me of that saying that's like, would you rather be right or would you rather be happy? Because it's almost asking you the question of like, do you want this? Do you need to be right about how this happens, or do you want it to happen? Like,
Yeah.
do you need to be right, or do you want to be happy, or do you need to be right about how it has to come in? Because you've got to let go of that. You've got to let go of being right if you want to be happy.
That's a great way to look at it.
Yeah, I never really thought of it that way before, but here we are.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, and you know, yeah, everything that we know in the universe came out of nothing.
Right.
So that's what you have to emulate on a smaller scale in
Yes.
your life.
I love that.
Yeah.
So for you, as someone who, you know, has been a doctor of Chinese medicine, and so, which I know involves a lot of energy work as well, but like also you have a skincare line and do a lot of stuff with essential oils and like very pure sort of products. And what to you is that balance of wellness, you know, this, and I think any of us who are kind of in this spiritual energetic world are always like, are wondering like, you know, maybe on some level I do make all of reality with my mind, and so nothing that I physically do matters, but like, where is that middle point of wellness of like, it does matter what you eat or what kind of stuff you put on your skin versus like, all that matters is your mindset?
Right. Yeah. So I think that comes down to quality of life. So, you know, you always hear the phrase, if mom's happy, everyone's happy. And for me with that, I took that very literally as, you know, if mom doesn't take care of herself to do what she needs to do to be balanced and happy, then no one's going to get anything that they want or have, because she's going to be a miserable individual, and it just doesn't work. That everyone should apply that to themselves. If you're not taking care of yourself physically, this is your vehicle to get you to stay here longer, so that you can do the work that you want to do for your family, for yourself, for the planet, whatever your goals are. So if you're not physically capable of living a good lifespan or functioning the way that you want to, you're not going to be able to focus on the more ethereal or esoteric portions of your life as effectively. So does that mean that you need to get so in shape that you can run marathons, or, you know, like, I don't know, lift a log or whatever you want to do? No. What it means is, where is your happy space for quality of life? And are you satisfied with what that looks like for you? And if you're not satisfied with what that looks like for you, then I would recommend reevaluating some of the things that are going on. But there is a, you know, you can manifest all you want, but there still needs to be a physical action that follows through on those intentions. And without that, it's just a thought. So in Chinese medicine, every organ has its own emotion, it's got its own energetic pathways, and it's also got its own spiritual element. And the way that it works is, your kidneys run your will and your creativity. Okay, so it's responsible for everything creative. But your spleen is what helps turn it into a physical thought. So until then, you're just creating what, but it's not actually in a form that anything else in your system can understand. So your spleen takes it and it turns it into a thought. And then your thought gets processed by your liver. And your liver kind of looks at things, and it's a blueprint maker. It says, okay, this is the thought. I want to build a house. You imagine the house. Now you thought about the house, and now you want to put an action plan together, right? So your liver is responsible for coming up with the blueprint, but it takes your heart, spleen, and then your kidneys as well to then take that whole thought and turn it into an action. Something that is actually something that you're physically doing to create it. So you can think about things all you want to bring to fruition, but unless there's a form of action follow through to help it catalyze, you're just going to be running your thoughts.
Right. Dude.
So if you're dreaming of this beautiful garden, no one's going to come and plant that garden for you, right? Like, you have to do some action on that to make it come to fruition. And the same thing is true for finding that spiritual balance between like the esoteric, ethereal, multidimensional realms, and then integrating into your physical system everything that's going on in that way. And that's what I think actually most people are struggling with now, is that integration of I'm getting all this information. Okay, I know all these light changes are happening. I can feel it. I can sense it. Something's going on. But then their body is slow to calibrate to it because it's not being nourished properly, or it's not getting enough sun or activity or whatever that is. So, and that's when it becomes personal, right? Like, which part of this do I need to change in order to make this integration happen more cohesively, more easily, let it flow? That's what most people are struggling with. That sand is lost in a lilac bush. I will have to look for that later.
Yeah. So first of all, I kid you not, when you started talking about what the different organs symbolize, I was like jumping at the gun to ask you about the spleen, because I've been so that was really synchronous how you went into that, because I have been experiencing like all this sort of like nervous, like high held kind of like energy in my spleen. But I feel like you just explained a lot of it to me, which is like, I have so many ideas and so many thoughts, and so just like constantly like all of these things. And without that like actionable expression of it, it feels like this, like,
oh yeah,
like it just gets like stuck there.
Absolutely. That's exactly what's happening. So the spleen is its spirit is the thought, right? But its emotion is worry.
Yes.
So, and most mothers have an issue with their spleen, right? And women in general tend to run their spleens down for lots of reasons in Chinese medicine. But worry without action, thought without action will destroy your spleen. So if you're constantly thinking about something, but you're not taking an action to resolve it or mitigate it in some way, all you're doing is just using all this energy for thoughts they have nowhere to go.
Right.
They're just literally like stuck in you. They're not even being sent out in a way that they could come back, because there's no plan. It's just a thought.
Right.
Or maybe you got that thought and then you come up with like 15 plans.
Yes.
On how to execute it, but you never make the final decision on which one, which is just as bad.
Right. Well, and it's so funny because I've been reading this book called Understanding Aleister Crowley's Thoth Tarot. And so it's a lot about tarot, and the way that part of the way that it talks about birthdays in that book is like each of the birthday sort of what do I want to say, like group of birthdays are linked up with one of the royal cards. So like my birthday falls into the segment of dates that's like the Prince of Pentacles. No, sorry, the Prince of Swords. And it talks about how like what's so characteristic of this birthday and this time is having so many ideas and so many thoughts, and like not being able to take that action to make it happen. And you know, and I get it. Like right now, for instance, I've been writing so much and I have all these pictures and all this video, and I can see what it is that I want to do. I'm not going to do it on social media. I like have a vision for what I want it to look like on my website, but it's like, the more that I hold off on actually expressing that and doing that, the more that it's this feeling like literally like I'm going to like explode, just like right in my spleen.
Yeah. I think that's, if you don't mind me sharing, part of my experience with you, the first treatment I gave you, that, and the second one as well, I believe that energy plexus,
solar
the
plexus.
yellow one was the one that I said, you know, like this one's the one that's struggling.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which goes goes back to, I kid you, like, I don't know, before I started my YouTube channel and kind of started on like the next iteration of my spiritual journey, which was back in Guatemala last year, the whole way that the whole thing started, weirdly, was I just suddenly had this like vision that was so meaningful to me of the color yellow. And over time, and like jaguar and like yellow, and over time, like integrating like more places that I was going, it was like, you have got to deal with things in your fucking solar plexus so that we can get up to the heart and get up to everything else. And I feel like I'm still going through it.
So there's an axis called, it's Shen. It's basically, it's your kidney, your spleen, and then your heart.
Yeah.
And you're, okay. And that it's like a Shen, Yi, Shen. So in your heart, in Chinese medicine, your heart is the seat of your consciousness. Your brain is a worthless lump in Chinese medicine. And so that whole axis is, think of it like the triad, like you see in different things are like, oh, the three, right? And they always include the heart. The heart's always there. It's usually in the middle. For a lot of people, it's the pineal, the heart, and the brain. That's the axis that they reference. But in Chinese medicine, it's the heart, spleen, and kidney. And if those are not in alignment, things are just not really going to move forward for what you're trying to achieve. And it's super important. And, you know, there are charts where you'll see, it almost looks like a pentagram, the 5 element charts. Okay. It looks like a pentagram. But I had a few really, really great teachers who actually showed it set up like a cross, like a plus sign.
Yeah.
And so in the pentagram one, they're all evenly outside the circle, right?
Right.
But in the cross, the spleen is in the middle, which means that your body, all the organs are dependent on your spleen in order to function properly after birth.
Great.
So it's an important one for you to focus on. And I
No, the beautiful thing about this path is, like, of course I could observe all this and get very, discouraged, but I feel like the path is just, okay, I'm able to observe this now. That is such a huge step. Like, the fact that I even like realize like that this is going on and beginning to get these answers, like, that is, I think, the biggest step on the way to healing, versus like when you're just all over the fucking place and like whatever,
right?
Like, you don't notice that your spleen versus anything, like everything is just like,
the admission that something is really wrong and it needs to be addressed. So big. It's definitely the first step. When did I do that?
Yeah, that's a good question. When did you do that?
I think I did that. So my whole life has been like a trippy setup of synchronistic events. Sometime when I was around like 11 or 12, I realized, I was like, I cannot deny this anymore. Like, I just can't. And so when I went to Canada to study Chinese medicine, a lot of events had taken place and lined up. My parents had gotten divorced just before I left, which gave me the incentive to pack up all my stuff. My college decided, where I worked at my college, let me use their fax machine and phone number. And the landlord in Canada rented me an apartment without ever meeting me or letting me see the apartment, which was a risk, but considering how dingy some of the apartments were on the island that I lived in, and I got a good apartment. I applied to one school, I got in. And that summer I made enough money to carry me through my first year, moving all my stuff to Canada, moving to Canada, living, tuition, all that stuff. And when I moved out there, I went out there with the intention of not speaking to anyone. Like, this would have been back in like 2004.
And how old were you?
21. So I just left. I had everything set up. the picture of I wish I had, there were no phone cameras back then. So it's not like I could just whip out my phone and take a picture of how crazy my stuff looked like coming off a moving truck. Like, I didn't see it get packed up, but my landlord was like, there's no way you're going to get your stuff today. And I was like, I want my shit. I want my shit. What bus do I have to get on to get here? And I got there, and then 2 hours later, all my stuff arrived on this truck. And it came, have you ever seen like in those Dr. Seuss books where like they stack the boxes, but they're all fucked up?
Yes.
Like that's exactly what my stuff looked like coming off of this truck. It was massive at the bottom, and then like all these boxes just like ended, and like the ones at the top were only like this big. And the guy was like smoking a cigarette. He's like, I don't know how you just did this. He's like, but that's incredible. I was like, I want my stuff. And so I took that time when I was in school learning about Chinese medicine, knowing that I didn't know anyone on the island. I wouldn't have cared because I didn't know who they were. And so I was just free to go through whatever I needed to go through. And I knew I had a lot of stuff to work through, but I didn't know what it was. I couldn't identify it. And it definitely took me all 5 years to identify the things that I needed to work through to heal from the traumas and experiences that I had growing up my entire life living in Baltimore. It was necessary for 5 years. And it wasn't fun all the time, for sure. It was a lot of painful revelations of things that were my fault, things that I couldn't control that I had to deal with, and then forgive myself for the actions that I took in response to it. Mm-hmm. And then, you know, the painful truth of learning who really stays in your life and who doesn't, and being okay with that. Yeah, I love that little island. I'll go back there again.
Where was it?
Vancouver Island.
Okay, yeah. I hear good things. Dude, I feel Canada calling. I wish I have no idea how I'm going to be able to get up there, but knowing the 5-dimensional world we live in, I guess anything's possible. So,
dude, as soon as the borders open up again, I've got a ticket plan to go up there. I'd like to go alone, but you know, I'll probably bring some friends with me. I have a lot of friends who want to come up there. So when I go, I don't think I'm going to go alone. I think it's going to be a whole posse of ladies that go.
Well, maybe one day we can do a retreat up in Canada.
I've got connections.
You know what I'm saying? So
I would love to hear that island. That island is magic. That island is the opposite of, I think, energetically, I think it's the opposite of the Middle East. So like the vibration that's there, the complete opposite of that is on that island.
Like the complement.
Yeah, it's the complement to it. And there is just some really raw, pure Gaia energy that flows through that place. I remember when I got there, I used to be a smoker. And so I knew I was going to quit smoking at 21, but after working a long summer, that was not what happened. And I lived on this huge hill, and I would walk up this hill and I would get winded every single time. And there was one night where I was walking up the hill and I just started getting really like lightheaded and dizzy. And so I stopped to sit down, and I literally watched this like 85-year-old monk just like glide past me up this hill. And I was like, oh my God, I need to quit smoking. I was like, this is ridiculous. Like, I'm 21, this dude's in his 80s and he's beating me up a hill. Like, I can't breathe. And like, as I was sitting there, I was noticing that the dizziness wasn't going away. And so like, I was like, all right, let me just focus on breathing for a minute here. And as I was breathing, I noticed it hit me. I just like smelling the air, and I was like, oh my God, this air is blowing straight in from the rainforest. I'm dizzy because I'm huffing oxygen. And I was like, I got to quit smoking. I was like, if this is the air I get to breathe every day, I was like, cigarettes are over.
And here you are.
Yeah.
Well, you know, Eliz, as has been my kind of take with everyone who I've done the divine dialogues with so far, I definitely know that this is the first of many, not only conversations, but recorded conversations for us. I'll just ask you, like, if there's anything coming through, you know, that you would like to share with anyone who might be listening to this to kind of wrap up, if there's anything that, I don't know, that is coming through for you to tell people, whether it's towards them waking up or getting healthy or being happy or just whatever.
If there's something you've been procrastinating on doing for yourself that's going to help you be healthier or improve your lifestyle, stop procrastinating and take the steps to do it.
Yes. Okay. All right. Well, I will take that advice myself as well.
I will too.
Yeah.
A little bit. I think we could all can hear that advice again.
Yeah, like daily. So again, I will be linking to everything, your website, everything for quantum healing and for working with you in any capacity, down in the about section of this video. Thank you so much for your time and beautiful presence, Eliz. I'm truly blessed to know you.
Thank you for having me. And yeah, let's have some more talks and wake people up.
Exactly. Let's do this. Okay.
Let's do it.
Okay. I'll talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.